Okay, thanks to all of you for being here. I'm just going to introduce Abbie Ince-Hendrickson, who is going to talk about the anatomy of a flower. She is wise beyond her years. She has a degree in wildlife biology, her own company, and just she has lots of information to share. So without any further ado, here's Abbie.
Thanks, Carolyn. Okay, good. Alrighty. Can everybody hear me? I can project. I can be loud. Okay, so hi, I'm Abbie, and I know we're all plant people, so we probably understand the basics of a plant, but I'm going to try and make this interesting, and it's going to be kind of a review, a hard and fast review for us, okay? So, this is who I am. I am a herpetologist. I love snakes. I got my master's on alligators, but then I kind of fell into plants during the pandemic. And John hired me on at the nursery, and it was a perfect fit. And I realized there's this enormous need for a sustainable and native landscape. And that's what I do. So my company is Living Wild. I have cards if you want it. And then, of course, I had to put some pictures up of the homestead because we are managing for wildlife diversity with native plants. And these are our wildlife friends that we see. So rat snake, buttermilk racer, red-shouldered hawk, red-headed, red-breasted, somebody? Bird people. I think it's a red belly. Okay. And then this is Stella, our bobcat. She's very cool, but we only see her on the trail camera at night. So that's about a little bit about who I am. Let's see. So what is botany? Botany is the study of plants. A botanist is a scientist who studies plants. The father of botany was Theophrastus, and he discovered how germination and soil goes together. Before him, we didn't really understand that soil was needed for germinating a seed. So that was kind of neat. What makes plants green is, of course, a chloroplast, but it's also the wavelength of the light that is absorbed. So this friend right here, this is a chloroplast. All the stacks inside are thalcaloids, and that has chlorophyll in it. So that is what makes the plant green. The sun gives off all of this visible light. Where you see the high peaks, that is where the most absorption is inside the plant leaf. So if what's not being absorbed, you can see once it hits green, it shoots down. It shoots down. That's why plants we see are green, because all the other colors of the light are being absorbed by the plant itself. The only thing reflected back is green. A little more history. Robert Hooke, he's the father of microbiology. He discovered cells, plant cells, because they looked like little monastery rooms in a monastery. They look like little cells, and so that's why he called them cells. But that was back in 1665, right around the invention of the microscope, so that was cool. So photosynthesis, that's the process of garnering sunlight and turning it into sugar. So plants breathe out oxygen. We animals breathe in oxygen and out carbon dioxide. When the photosynthesis is occurring, oxygen is needed to carry the electron down the transport chain so that it can actually make that waste product oxygen. That's wasteful to plants, but that's the only reason we're here is because of their waste. Angiosperm versus gymnosperms. Do we know what that is? Aram, what's a gymnosperm?
Well, it's a plant that doesn't flower. Pre-flowering plant.
Pre-flowering plant, that's right. So gymnosperms, if you break it down, gymno means naked in ancient Greek, and then sperm means seed. So it's a naked seed, and that is the pine cone. So whenever the pine cone opens up, it's just the seeds in there, right? Instead of being an angiosperm, instead of having a naked seed, angiosperms have seeds that are encapsulated. And they have seeds usually down in the base of the flower pit. So we'll talk about that more once we get closer to dissecting our flowers. But there's just a couple things that I wanted to talk about between angiosperms and gymnosperms. So angiosperms are all the flowering plants. If it flowers, it's an angiosperm. They evolved about 110 million years ago. So they're fairly recent evolved friends. Now, palynology. Do we know what that is? Put your hand down, Aram. Palynology? Okay, Aram.
Study of pollen.
Yeah, it's the study of ancient pollen. So we dig down in these ice cores, or we dig down into these sedimentary deposits and we look at the ancient pollen that's there. And what they're finding in Switzerland is about a pollen that's 130 million years old, which is older than what we thought. Interesting. Our earliest known pollinator is a tumbling flower beetle. It was encapsulated in amber. And it's about 99 million years old. So the first pollinators were beetles, and bees did not come until quite a few million years later. Gymnosperms are the oldest living organism. It's Methuselah. She's a bristlecone pine in Arizona. Not Arizona? California. She's in Cali. She's in Cali, and she's like 4,873 years old. She's old, and she's still living. Yeah?
Give or take.
Give or take, yeah. Okay, and then of course our gymnosperms, they evolved almost 400 million years ago. They're quite old, so they were the first plants that the dinosaurs and the giant bugs were looking around at. Pretty neat. We also have carnivorous plants. Here in Texas, we have sundews. If you go into really boggy areas, so that's a sundew, that's a sundew. If you go into a really boggy area, you might be able to find some pitcher plants, though I'm not sure if we have any native varieties. You may have to, we do. We may have to go into Louisiana to find them, like a lot. But where are the natives?
In East Texas.
Big thicket.
Big thicket, okay. So there's carnivorous plants, which are super cool. How they work. Inside, right here, there's lots of little hairs that look like this, only they're very small. And if a piece of dust fell on the flower and it hit a hair, it's not going to close. It has the bug, whatever prey item is getting in here, it has to touch 2 hairs within 3 seconds. So bump, bump, and then it shuts. It would be a waste of energy if it just shut every time a piece of dust fell in or a piece of leaf or whatever. But it has to hit 2 and then it shuts. These guys down here, there's this syrupy nectar substance that's attractive to a lot of insects. And the lip of the pitcher plant is very slick. So the insects get attracted to it, they slip in, and then the juices at the bottom are actually digestive juices. So it slowly just breaks down the insect, and that's where they're getting the majority of their nutrients from. So why should we plant natives? Native plants are plants that occur in a natural area without our intervention, without us picking it up from Asia and putting it in North America. That's not a native plant. So beautyberry, that's a native. We have tons of natives that do amazing things for our wildlife. So they feed the wildlife, they give them shelter and nesting material. Planting native also helps you save water, save on your water bill, because most of them are drought tolerant, especially in Texas. And they do create a sense of place, and I wanted to talk about forest bathing just because I think it's fun. If you're having a bad day, you can go out into the forest, and the dopamine that you get from just being outside is going to elevate your mood. And there's books that are written about forest bathing. It's kind of this, I want to say it's an ancient Asian practice. Japanese, thank you. And it's kind of cool. I mean, I don't practice it how Japanese people were practicing it. I just go outside and say, I've had a rough day. I need some sunshine. So it usually helps. And just remember that healthy ecosystems, they cause healthy people. So if the ecosystem is intact, we're not going to have pests. We're not going to have disease, or we're not going to have real problems because of the ecosystem being out of whack. These are just a couple categories of leaves. We have opposite, which of course they're opposite, right? Pinnate is also opposite, but you can see where the venation starts very close to the stem. Yeah, they're very close to the stem, and they have a little bit of venation out to the side. This is a palmate leaf. That's just the shape of it. Margins is talking about this in between. I used to call these lobes. Simple, compound, and then the entire leaf like a flowering dogwood. I think we're pretty familiar with shapes of leaves, right? I mean, we can look at this guy and go, oh, that's a maple. That's a maple. Some more venation just to help think about what you see on a plant. So this is serrated on the edges. Oh, maybe something like that. But really I want to look at the veins. So they are one straight vein with two branches. A lot like that. That one. This one is pretty obviously parallel venation. The veins all run parallel to each other. There's a whole science behind this. People get really into the nitty-gritty about it. I don't think that we need to go there. But if we find cool, interesting leaves on our plant walk, we can maybe classify them by venation. So I'm going to pass out some flowers, and we're going to do a little bit of a flower dissection. Yeah. I think there's enough for everybody to have one. There's that.
Thank you.
Would you mind giving, oh, sorry, one to Aram? There's that. Would you mind passing one back? Okay, try not to trip over things. So, looking at our, does everybody have a flower? John has a flower, okay. So looking at the flower, I talked about how angiosperms have a cover on their seeds. So if we look down here, this is the base of the flower. That's the ovule, all right? It's very similar to our eggs that we have. This is the ovary of the plant, and inside the ovary is the ovules. The stigma and style, that is where the pollen hits, and it fertilizes these eggs. So it has to hit here and travel down there. That's how it fertilizes. Now what these are for, this is obviously a hermaphroditic plant, because this is female parts. This is the male parts, the anther and the filament, which make up the stamen. So on the stamen, we can peel 2 or 3 little flower petals back, and you can see the little grayish blue pollen anthers connected to the stamens. And then very in the center, there's a prong with 3 little extensions. That is the stigma. Does everybody see the little 3 prong with the extension? That's the stigma. Okay. So we can peel back more. I'm going to go ahead and take all of my petals off so that I can see the ovule and the ovary. Whoop. So what is left at the base of my stem is the ovary and the ovules. That's it. That's all there is to a flower. It's just sexual reproduction at this point. Plants can be self-pollinating, but the reason we have sexual reproduction is to enhance our genetic diversity. So if we all have a high diversity of our genetics, it's a low possibility that a disease could come in and wipe out all of our plants, all of a single species of plant. Because if you have different genetics and different resistances, that's a complete diverse genetic grouping. So we want diversity. We want things that are going to be, let me see if I have another, I think this is the last one. Yeah. So we want to add in diversity because it staves off diseases. And I think as our talks go on, we're going to talk about this, I think. But the more diversity that you have in an ecosystem, the less possibility is something that's going to come in and just wipe it out. A good example is the monoculture pine trees that we have, and people are treating them for bark beetles. If you have a whole 200 acres of pine trees and bark beetles come in, they're going to decimate the whole thing. But if it was some pine, some oak, some of this, you still would have a forest structure intact. Does that make sense? Okay. That's all I have for you guys. Thanks for listening. And does anyone have any questions? Nope. Alrighty. Thanks, guys.
We'll take about a couple of minutes.